If you've played video games for any length of time, you've undoubtedly had a frustrating experience that inspired you to start yelling at your television. 9 times out of 10, this rarely produces any appreciable results. But with Lifeline, Konami's new voice-activated adventure game, the primary gameplay mechanic forces you to talk to the main character through the game using a USB headset. The premise of Lifeline is simple but unique. A horde of monsters invades a space station hotel during its grand opening, and you end up sealed in the station's control room. You're trapped. But you can see every room in the station thanks to the security cameras. You come across a waitress named Rio who's locked up in the space station's barracks. The two of you team up to help each other find people that you're looking for and to get off this monster-infested space station. You're unable to directly control the game's main character, but you can open some doors she comes upon, and you can tell her what to do and where to go with the USB headset. Rio responds exclusively to voice commands, so if you wanted to do something, you'll have to talk her through it. Think of it like a high-tech version of the old text-parsing adventure games like King's Quest or Zork, and you'll have a rough idea of what type of experience you're in for. Lifeline is, by and large, an adventure game. You'll explore the space station looking for keys and other items that will help you get past locked doors and various puzzles. Movement is made fairly simple by the virtue that any location you'll need to go to is labeled on the game's overlay map. Once you've reached a specific location, you basically have to guess what an item is before Rio can interact with it, which can prove to be quite arduous. Most of the game's puzzles are pretty obvious, but the real challenge is usually figuring out the exact phrasing that the game is looking for. There are also points where the solution to a puzzle is needlessly cryptic, making some kind of walkthrough or an extremely patient and persistent personality a necessity. As you wander the rooms and corridors of the space station hotel, you'll regularly run into the monsters that caused the initial havoc. The combat is pretty easy when you're facing a single enemy, but things get a whole lot harder when there are 3 or 4 enemies coming at you at once. Simply put, Lifeline tries to do too much with a clunky combat system, and it will regularly leave you quite flustered. The conceit behind Lifeline is certainly an interesting one. Forcing you to actually talk out loud to the character on screen to get things done is a potentially immersive effect. And when everything is humming, the game can feel surprisingly real. To its credit, Lifeline's pretty good about recognizing several different descriptions for any one object. But Rio can easily confuse one word for another, which will cause her to run off in a different direction. With the voice recognition being so touchy, you'll eventually find yourself dropping out any incidental words you might use in an actual conversation, stripping all of your language down to simple noun plus verb combinations. This all but ruins the illusion that you're really talking to a real person. For the most part, Lifeline does a fine job of creating a believably realistic world for you to explore. You start off the game in one of the hotel's guest areas, which seems like a pretty good approximation of what a luxury hotel in space might look like. And Rio, still in her cocktail waitress uniform, fits naturally into these areas. The game eventually takes you outside the space station's civilian areas, where things are more utilitarian and not so cozy, and Rio has a costume change around the same time, keeping her from looking too out of place. Her character and the other characters you'll encounter look and move quite naturally, though some of the facial animations look a little mechanical. For the most part, Lifeline's visuals do just enough to make things seem passably real. With the crux of the game revolving around voice communication, the game's sound design is dominated by the chatter of characters, with Rio being the dominant speaker, obviously. Rio is voiced by actress Kristen Miller, whose voice is a solid fit for the young blonde Rio. Her delivery, however, while not entirely out-and-out terrible, seems a little leaden. The voice acting for the other characters isn't a whole lot better, and oscillates between stilted and just overly dramatic. There's a lot of potential in the premise behind Lifeline, and despite the game's many imperfections, there are moments when everything clicks and you're given an experience that's truly unique. But there are other moments when Rio isn't able to understand your commands, which will have you feeling like you're playing a run-of-the-mill adventure game, but with broken controls. If the ratio of these moments had been more in the favor of the unique, memorable ones, Lifeline would be a much easier game to recommend. As it stands, though, Lifeline is a game with ambitions that outstrip its technology and its design. For the full story, be sure to read our text review.